What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to MLB Swing for the Fences here on the Run Pure Sports YouTube channel. It's Tuesday, June 24th, and we got a very fun, very interesting 12-game baseball slate to talk about. As usual, joined by Steve Boyden here on Tuesdays. Steve, how are you doing on this Tuesday afternoon?
I'm doing all right. I've been traveling a lot the last couple of weeks, but finally in Chicago for more than 4 days at a time. So being on two shows in 1 week isn't something that I've done in a while, but good to get back into routine. We got a huge slate. We were chatting a bit before we went live. The Dodgers and Coors with the 7.5 team total, and a bunch of offenses kind of muddled in the same team total range. So, if we have some strong opinions on those teams that are kind of, tough to sift through, I think that's a great tiebreaker on a slate like this, where I think most people will just kind of spread it out. So, interested to get into it.
Yeah, really, really fun slate. Yeah, I played a lot of Erod last night, but also played some Ben Brown, who just got sent down to AAA. So, never feels good when one of your players gets
two pitchers, man. Really, really tough. Really, really tough at this league.
He started off super hot too. First couple innings
looked
awesome, and then it's the 2-pitch thing for Brown. He needs a third pitch, a changeup, I think, for the lefties who just absolutely nuked him. So that wasn't fun. Sent my DFS night into a tailspin last night, but we'll hope we get going again tonight. And I think because of all the good plays, we're going to get a few, I think, really strong plays that go under the radar tonight. So perhaps a chance to get back in the winner's circle. And yeah, big tournaments, DraftKings, FanDuel, 12 games. Got some MLB debuts, Coors Field with the Dodgers. A lot to talk about, 12 games to get to. Let's get into it, Steve. Let's start in New York for the Mets and the Braves. Schwellenbach, pretty solid last night. Did give up the 2-run home run. DeSoto was pretty good otherwise. Braves will go with Spencer Strider here, who has been really, really good in these last 2 games. Stuff is up, velocity is up a little bit. Looks more and more like himself, which makes sense given the significant injury that he's coming off of. Not surprising. It's kind of what I expected from Strider. And it'll be curious to see if he can continue his good run of pitching, continue to get stronger for the Braves. I think he's interesting here against the Mets on a different slate. I would have a lot of interest in Strider on this slate. I think he might be a little bit overpriced at $10K. I still don't think he's back to his normal self despite the monster results in his last 2 starts, including against this Mets team, right? I believe had the big outing. Kind of think the Mets might get to him here, but Strider 10K in play. And then the Mets will go with Frankie Montas, longtime veteran, but making his first start at the MLB level of the 2025 season. Of note for Montas, really struggled last year against lefties. I think close to a 400 WOBA allowed, which is a really, really high number. And we were talking in the Discord. He's been just, it's only 52 plate appearances against lefties in the minors, but just off the charts bad numbers. A 1678 OPS allowed for Montas against lefties in his 5 or 6 minor league starts so far. So Matt Olson, Drake Baldwin, even Michael Harris II could be in play here, perhaps somewhat painfully. So mostly Braves here for me. I don't think I'm going to play many Mets on this slate, but I don't know. Wouldn't be shocked if Soto continued the damage against Strider. Against, Strider, a 2-pitch pitcher. I could see him kind of struggling against lefties going forward too. So, yeah, mostly Braves for me in this one, and mostly going to stick to the left-handed Braves bats. But, of course, Acuna just absolutely on fire. He's a good play as well. Steve, what are you doing with Atlanta and the Mets to kick off this slate?
Yeah, Strider up at 10K. Kind of tough for me in this matchup. I played Schwellenbach at that same price last night, but not because, I thought that he was an elite play overall. It was just kind of a context of the slate thing. It was a really tough pitching slate last night. I was with you. I just kind of wanted to take my 18 plus and move on, which is kind of what we got from anyone. I think he was low low 20s.
Him and Will were both low 20s, which is kind of what we talked about. So,
yeah. So I do have Crochet above him. I think the guys in the 9K range below him who have the safer matchups are better plays too. I'm not 100% bought in that he's totally back. I think at 10K on the road against the Mets, who, don't strike out. Like we saw it last night. I thought Schwellenbach looked awesome. And the Mets were fouling off pitches, just making contact. So not a great spot for him here on a slate where I'm trying to, I'm kind of having difficulty narrowing down my pitcher pool in general. Like I've got 10 guys that I talked about in the playbook. So Strider's not my favorite arm here up top. I do like the Braves bats, like you said, for the same reasons. Like the Mets are kind of in free fall right now. They've lost 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, something like that. Their pitching cannot stay healthy. They just got bad news on Manaea about an hour ago. I don't think Montes would be up, DC, if these guys weren't hurt. I think that they wanted to give him more time in the minors, especially the way that he's looked. Like he's been terrible. Like you said, big-time struggles against lefties in the minors. That was true last year, too. Lefties just annihilated him, gives up speed. I really like the Braves here, and they're looking like pretty low-owned. Sabersim's got them with I believe, the third highest team total on the entire slate, either third or fourth. But I've seen pretty low ownership here. I like the price tags on everyone. Probably going to use them more in secondary stacks, like the lefties plus Acuna. You do get Drake Baldwin in there, which is nice, the lefty catcher as well. So, yeah, I'm with you. This is all Braves for me. I bet Braves this morning. But like the bats more than I like Strider here.
Yeah. Won't be shocked if Strider has a good game, but I do think there's, 5, 6, 7 pitchers that I prefer over him on this particular slate.
Yeah.
Last night, he might have been SP1, but it's just obviously a slate-by-slate thing when it comes to DFS. And on this slate, I do think there are better options at pitcher. You mentioned Crochet. I think he's one of them. A few others, of course, that we'll talk about during the show. So no issue with people playing Strider. What's his ownership look like? Because that obviously
mid-teens right now, I think, something like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. 10 to 15% on for Strider, who I think is a fine play. If you're on Strider, I don't think you need to move off him or anything like that. But we both think there are better options to go to, and I got to make sure to get some Baldwin and Olsen in particular. I think are the two guys to target most heavily from the Braves. Michael Harris did hit a couple balls hard yesterday, but same old story.
Hey, if he gets on base, maybe he'll steal a bag for us.
Yeah,
get there that way.
Hope for a single and a steal from Mr. Harris, who's hard to believe how much he's fallen off after such a promising start to his career. But no time to talk about that today. Let's keep it moving to Cincinnati. Going to be hot, of course, in Cincinnati. Going to play as a very hitter-friendly ballpark here. Mark Wegner also calling balls and strikes, so bump to the hitters and against the pitchers. But nevertheless, I kind of like both of these pitchers. Carlos Rodon, who I don't play that much of, honestly, and not enough of. I think you could argue he's, overpriced here at 10.7K. I don't think he's on the level of a pitcher like Garrett Crochet, and he's priced like he is in a dangerous matchup in this park, like it is for any pitcher. But still, Rodon's been really good, and there is a lot of strikeouts to be had against this Reds team. I think Rodon at his ownership, and the ownership thing is going to be a theme of this show just because there's so many good plays, both at pitcher and hitting, and obviously partly because it's a 12-game slate. But
yeah,
our friends over at Sabre have Rodon at 5% owned right now, which feels like a really strong play given his upside. He's going to give you 100 pitches. We know the strikeout stuff should be there, and nobody's going to play him. So I do like Carlos Rodon. I do like him more than Strider too, even with a little bit of a price increase. And then perhaps burying the lead a little bit, but I think the best pitching prospect in all of baseball, Chase Burns, going to make his MLB debut today. Been absolutely on fire. Number 2 overall pick last year, tearing up the minor leagues to a level that honestly feels a lot like Paul Skeens to me. I do think he's a prospect of similar ilk to Paul Skeens. The numbers show it. The stuff shows it. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him go out and dominate today. We've seen plenty of pitchers of this pet schemes has done. A Strasburg before him. He's that level of pitcher. And I think, Steve, that it's way easier for a pitcher to adjust moving up to the big leagues than it is for a hitter because you're just throwing your pitches.
I know we're losing you a bit, DC. See if you can reconnect and pop back in here. So Burns, I think I agree, top pitching prospect in all of baseball, has really, really come on quickly too. Like he's only thrown 66 innings in the minor leagues total, but the stuff just jumps off the chart. He's got a 100-mile-an-hour fastball, 70 grade fastball for him. So I don't have any concerns with him long term. The issue is obviously the park and the matchup, him going up against the Yankees here in 90-degree heat with some slight winds blowing out in that park. It's a really, really tough spot for him to make his debut. But the stuff is so good. I mean, he had a strikeout rate of nearly 40% in the minor leagues, higher than that in college, obviously. So this is a mega talent that we're going to be buying on long term. I'm going to play this on both sides. I rarely do that, but in my 20, I'm going to have some of him just because of the strikeout rate. But then I think it's hard to ignore just the Yankees entirely in this park. If it does go bad for him, I could see it being the long ball that does it. And it's just, you're just playing this park against a guy making his debut. So I like Burns. I'm going to play some, really like him long-term, but I also do get the Yankees side of this with a guy making his debut in this park in 90-degree heat. Looks like we have DC back.
Yeah. I don't know if this will prove true. People talking about Burns getting steamed. I guess that's
I doubt it, dude. I mean, the Yankees have a 5.5 team total. People just don't play guys against high team totals besides us.
Yeah. And honestly, most people are just, making their lineups on projections and, using the team totals and that type of stuff, which of course is generally a good baseline. And you get it why the Yankees have a high team total against Chase Burns, a pitcher making his MLB debut. But part of it is, of course, the park, right? Like fly balls are going to go out for home runs in this park. And also the Reds bullpen is terrible. The Yankees have a ton of power. But if we're talking about DFS, I mean, you can get away with a game. I mean, look what the Yankees did yesterday, right? They just didn't do a ton of damage. You can kind of, get away with a tough park for one start. And even if he gives up a solo home run or whatever, you could get the job done. So Burns throwing mid-80s, I think they worked him up to in terms of pitch count. If he's rolling here, I wouldn't be shocked at all to see him approach or even, somewhat exceed 100 pitches. It's just no point in, pushing him that far in the minor league. So I think Burns has just about as much upside as anyone else, just way more risk too, right? Like I totally get that part of it. But on this slate, I think you're going to need two pretty big scores out of starting pitching, at least from the somewhat expensive guys. And I think Burns can absolutely deliver that. So, I'm in on Chase Burns.
DC, the big thing for me real quick before we move on is like who he's priced around. There aren't that many high upside pitchers that you're in that range. In that range, you're playing guys like Verlander, Luis Castillo, who are more of like, I hope they get me 15. Whereas if Burns is locked in, I mean, this is a guy with a 40% strikeout rate in the minor leagues. He could even give up some damage if he strikes out 7 or 8. He's going to outscore those guys in that range.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, even as good as Judge has been, he's striking out a ton recently. So there's really nobody in this lineup that when they come up, it's not, that's not a strikeout opportunity for Burns. We'll see if he can, throw strikes, but the command looks good. He hasn't had issues walking hitters, and the stuff is clearly off the charts. If you turn on this game, if you got Chase Burns, at 3% owned, and you turn on this game, he's throwing 100 miles per hour. He's a type of pitcher who could easily strike out the side in the first inning. Maybe you're off to the races at that point. So at his ownership, I do think he's an awesome play. We'll absolutely have Burns. I missed what your thoughts were on Rodon while I was reconnecting there. Had too many windows open, Steve. Too many games on this. I had like 7 billion windows open, so I closed.
That happened to me last Tuesday when I started to get the FanGraph ads. I have since subscribed, so it doesn't.
There we go.
So
there we go.
I just think that Rodon in this park at the full price tag. I think I'm just going to push all those teams over to Crochet. I just love Crochet in this spot. I just want to get, as over the field as I can. Rodon's been a guy that I think both of us have been kind of tentative to buy into how great he's been this year. So I don't really want to hop in this park in this weather for a fly ball pitcher. But there's no denying how awesome he's been. One thing I forgot to mention real quick with the Braves before we move on, I put in the playbook. The Mets trying to come back last night used their top 4 relievers all for like 20 plus pitches. So if this goes bad early for Montas, we could kind of see them punt this game and not use their top 3-4 arms in the pen, which would obviously be huge for runs late for the Braves.
Yeah, Braves pretty sneaky tonight, I think. I'm with you on that one. We'll keep it moving. Diamondbacks and White Sox up next. This one in Rate Field in Chicago. Going to be warm. Ball should be flying as it was last night. The D-backs, though, did lose 2 of their, really 3 of their best hitters. Corbin Carroll, fractured wrist. He's going to be out a long time. Eugenio Suarez got hit by a pitch on the hand. X-ray's negative, so he should be fine, but he's not in the lineup tonight. I assume he is unavailable, would be my guess, outside of, maybe a really, really big spot, something like that. They call him up in the 9th inning. But I think in all likelihood, Suarez will not make an appearance in this game. And I would assume Josh Naylor, who was in the original lineup, scratched as well. Probably want to give him a day off too. Again, no guarantees there, but probably Naylor and Suarez, I would guess, won't see the field, won't see a plate appearance in this game if it goes to plan for the D-backs and they're able to take care of the White Sox, which they probably will even without those guys.
They're down Moreno too, the catcher.
Moreno down as well. So it obviously weakens the Diamondbacks lineup, but it does make them easier to stack because you don't have to choose between Pavin Smith and Josh Naylor. I chose wrong last night. Had a lot of Naylor, no Smith. Before Smith hits the 2 home runs. Problem with this lineup for the D-backs is there's just not a lot of great bats anymore when you take the 4 of their best hitters out of lineup. But the top 3 still looks good. Perdomo, Marte, Pavin Smith, probably going to keep it to a 3-man stack for the most part. White Sox going with the bullpen game, which isn't a great idea when you've got the worst bullpen in baseball. So I do think the D-backs can do some damage here. It'll be Jordan Leisure starting for the White Sox. I would only expect an inning or 2 out of him, though. And then Ryan Nelson, one of the cheap pitching options today. Not a high upside future arm by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think a competent one. And given the state of the Diamondbacks bullpen, they've also been hit super hard by injury, at the bullpen level as well. They're rightfully hesitant to go to the bullpen early. So I think you could see Nelson go 5 or 6 innings here if it's going well for him. Digging into the matchup a little bit, Steve, White Sox, no surprise, they're one of the worst offenses in baseball, but they especially struggle against the 4-seam fastball, which Nelson throws about as much as any pitcher in baseball, 60% 4-seam rate. I think he can kind of just attack this team. They don't have any power with his fastball. And this seems like a game where Nelson could give you 15 to 20 fantasy points to me, which at that price point on this slate, I think makes him a reasonable play. It does look like he's going to gain a lot of ownership, though, seeing him as one of the higher owned, definitely the highest owned cheap option. So, kind of give and take there a little bit with Nelson. Curious where you ended up with him. I assume no White Sox pitchers. And then what are you doing with the offenses in this game, Steve?
Yeah, start with Nelson. I think he just fits well. Like you said, he uses the fastball up. It grades out really, really well. He does have a good fastball here. and the White Sox just have not hit right-handed pitching at all. Bottom 3 offense in baseball. 29th in weighted runs created plus, 28th in ISO, last 30 in the split. Nelson's been pretty unlucky so far. His xFIP is under 4. It's better than Freddie Peralta's, for comparison, who we'll talk about in a bit. So, it's a clean matchup here as a road favorite and a cheap price tag for the upside. Like, the projection we have on him is about the same as guys who are 1,000 or 1,500 ahead of him. So if you want to play some more expensive bats, which I kind of do on the slate, I think Nelson is the safest of the cheap options. So I do like him. I think he's playable on a main team. And then, I like the Snakes again tonight. Was on them last night. The lineup's cheap. I kind of like the rest of the lineup a little bit more than you, I think, just because I think with these guys scratch, I think the pinch hit risk is much less on the lefty outfielders like McCarthy and Thomas, who I'm usually trying to avoid. But now, we've got Jake McCarthy hitting 5th, who's probably safe in this game at 3K. So I think the full stacks are viable here. The White Sox used the pen for 7 innings last night because the Snakes got to Shane Smith so early. This is another spot, kind of like what I talked about with the Mets using their top relievers. I think that the White Sox could kind of let one of their long men eat this game, either Alexander or Vassell, who both have estimators north of 5, which are like would be the worst on the slate if they were starting games. So it just feels like a game that could kind of get away from them. And, despite the weaker lineup, it just kind of makes it cheaper on a slate where, we do have Crochet, we have Strider, we have 3 guys in the 9K range that we'll talk about. So I think Arizona is one of my favorite stacks if you're trying to get up to a Crochet, just because you're able to include a guy like Marte so easily because, 3/4 of the lineup is, 3,500 or less.
Yeah, looking at the Diamondbacks active roster, they've got obviously the backup catcher, James McCann. Teams are typically pretty hesitant to use. It's not like McCann's going to pinch hit for any of the outfielders.
Basically, Tawa, isn't it?
Just Tawa is the only one. I think he can kind of play all over, so he could conceivably come in for McCarthy or Thomas, but it could be Vargas, could be Pavin Smith. I think maybe, probably not. Just a safer spot for these Diamondbacks. Problem is these guys can't really hit the bottom of the order. So I get it, going to these cheaper guys. It doesn't make a ton of sense. And not to spend too much more time on Chase Burns, but one of the developments baseball-wise over the last couple of years, we now have the actual data on the pitches in the minor league. So before you saw a minor league pitcher with a big strikeout rate, but you weren't really sure what kind of stuff, if that stuff was going to translate to the big league level. With Chase Burns, we know his stuff is going to be some of the best in baseball. It doesn't necessarily mean he'll be awesome as a pitcher. There's more to it than that. It doesn't, of course, mean he'll be great tonight. But we do know for sure Chase Burns has elite stuff. There's just no question about that. He will look good out there, at least in terms of the raw stuff. Obviously, got to navigate that Yankees lineup, but pretty excited to watch Chase Burns tonight. Seattle and Minnesota up next. Mariners rocked Bailey Ober. No shock there. I know you were kind of on the fade Ober, play some Mariners bats.
Yeah.
They came through yesterday. Camporeale, another home run. It was, I think, in the 9th inning or close to it anyway, late in the game. But, man, he is just incredible. I played him, I think, on 80% of my DK lineups. Catcher was just brutal yesterday.
So I was texting with JVC about this. After Judge hits the bomb in the first inning, I check, and I have 0 Judge. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And it's because Saber jammed 40% Camporeale because catcher was so bad.
Yeah, if you look at the boom report that Stats does for us, Raleigh just sticks out as the best catcher, best play on the slate, really. When you compare him to the other catchers on most slates, I do think there's some better catchers available on this slate, but his ability in comparison to by far the weakest position makes him just an elite tournament play on every slate, including this one against Chris Paddock, who gives up a lot of power, a lot of fly balls, another good hitting conditions in Minneapolis. I think this Mariners team could do some more damage. They will have to contend with the Twins bullpen if the game is close, which is never ideal, but I still do like this Mariners team quite a bit. No Polanco in the lineup. So, yeah, it does fall off a little bit, but the top four looks good. Crawford, Julio, Raleigh, Rosarena. Canzone is cheap and has been crushing the ball. Rayleigh hit a bomb last night. Cole Young, super cheap down there in the 9-hole. So I do like the Mariners quite a bit here. We'll probably need to do a lot of damage early to, I think, ultimately get there to the winner as a full stack, but could certainly happen against Chris Paddock. Like the Mariners quite a bit. And then on the other side, I think a sneaky twin stack here could be in play against Luis Castillo, who is not the pitcher he once was and also has pretty severe splits both home and away, where he's much, much better in Seattle, as all the Mariners pitchers are, than he is on the road. And he's also much better against right-handed hitters than he is against lefties. So these Twins lefties will get the advantage on both of those splits, which are pretty severe for Castillo. If you look at just the split of Castillo on the road against lefties over the last couple of years, he's been hit very, very hard. Twins have some power from the left side. Larnach, Wallner, and Cody Clemens in particular look good. Brooks Lee in the three hole looks good to me as well. And then I think just one lefty available in the Seattle pen as well. So not zero, but less pinch hit risk for these Twins lefties than they typically have. And I like all four of those guys, really. Larnach, Lee, Wallner, and Clemens. Clemens super cheap down there at 2,900, killing right-handed pitching this year. He is the biggest pinch hit risk of all of them, but a decent chance he's in there the full game. I think we could see some offense in this one, Steve. What are you doing with Mariners and Twins?
Yeah, it is going to have to come early. Both these pens are pretty good. I like this game for secondary stacks and one-offs, kind of like you were saying. I had the same 4 bats in for the Twins. You know, he's just going to give up power to left-handed bats. And I kind of like picking that off here. I mean, they're all cheap too. Larnach and Wallner, 37, 36. Brooks Lee, a good play at 28. And then,
you don't need a full stack here. One-off, mini stacks are totally fine with Twins because you're really almost strictly chasing the home runs with all these guys.
Yeah, for sure. And then, I mean, what more is there to say about what Seattle's done over the last week? You know, being at Wrigley all weekend, of course, helped, but they didn't disappoint. Our guy Canzone, I know, was in a bunch of Coors on Sunday, hit the 2 bombs, so he was a hero. So I'll kind of be playing the one-offs and minis on both sides here. I've got most of the Seattle guys. I took out like Solano and Williamson, but, man, they're just tearing the cover off the ball, not really scared of Paddock. So I don't have either pitcher here. I do have one-offs and secondary stacks, though.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I'm pretty much sticking to the lefties for the Twins, but I do really, really like that those guys for home run calls. And then, Seattle 1 through 4 is kind of where I'm going with Seattle. But, definitely getting some Camporeale in my life as I try to do every slate where he's on there, really regardless of matchup. But today he's got certainly a good one against Chris Paddock. Up next, we go to Kansas City. Another good hitting weather in KC, 90 degrees, wind blowing out to left center field, humidity as well, which helps a little bit with the ball carrying. We've got Chris Bubic going for KC. Not that I'm bitter, Steve, but you actually ended up okay against Texas, but started off a little bit rough. Gets Tampa here. Curious where you ended up on Bubic. I don't think I'm going to get there at 9K, but I do think he'll go a little bit under the radar. And he's certainly been awesome. I think you like him just in general a little bit more than I do. I still have some question marks about his long-term ability, but I get it. I think he's a decent play here. And then Taj Bradley, who I've been kind of saying is overrated for a while. I still believe that. He's been okay this season, but, sitting with that ERA right around 5, which I kind of think the pitcher he is. So I think he's an overrated arm. And maybe this Kansas City stack, a little bit underrated and really good hitting conditions in Kansas City. looking at the ownerships for the Royals, seeing basically everybody under 10%. Yeah, 5 to 10% for most of this lineup. So I think they're interesting against Bradley. Good bullpen from the Rays is concerning, but if Bubic pitches well and the Royals are off to a big lead, you might not see the good arms out of that Rays pen. What are you doing, Steve, with Rays and Royals here?
Yeah, I've been a little bit higher than consensus on him all season. It's worked out for the most part. He had the awful start against the Yankees. I like him against right-handed heavy teams because he is a reverse splits guy, and the Rays are going to throw out 7 or 8 righties probably against him here. He just always kind of seems like he's under projected. I think most systems are using longer term data where I think that he's a different pitcher this season, and it's not taking that entirely into account. I always bump him up by a couple points. I like the price tag. I think they hit Bradley here. I think he has a good chance at a win. I just like him in general. So I'm going to play him in tournaments nearly every slate. He always comes in lower owned than he should. I think especially on this slate where he's priced right next to Peralta, I think he's a super interesting tournament play, that same price tag. I obviously like Peralta better, 1-to-1. But if you're playing several lineups, I like playing some of Bubic here. I think you can play both of them too, honestly. And then I have some Royals bats. I just play the top 6. I don't like to fuck around with the bottom of their order, but the top 6 is good. A little bit priced up with Witt and Garcia, but man, Garcia's had an underrated, awesome season overall. Really hitting the ball, steals bags. So I'm going to stick at the top of the order here against Bradley.
Yeah, it falls off a lot after Caglione in the 6 hole, like you mentioned. I'm personally not going to play Waters, Rave, and Isbell down there, but the top 6 do look good for the Royals. They are a little bit expensive, as you mentioned, with Witt and Garcia. But, yeah, Salvador Perez, 3,500, I think an awesome play at catcher. And then Caglione, Pasquantino, India. Yeah, I think KC pretty sneaky and should go a little bit under the radar. Looks like a pretty good way to go tonight. Let's go to Milwaukee next. We're going to see looks like a fairly popular Freddie Peralta. Hard to argue too much against it going up against the Pirates. Chad Patrick gave up a couple runs last night, but also missed a ton of bats. And, yeah, Peralta, I think, has as much upside in this matchup as he will in any matchup, which does make him a strong play. Curious where you ended up with Peralta. I don't think I'm going there as a chalk play on this slate on a different. Listen, yesterday I would have played Peralta for sure.
Yeah,
now 200 on this slate. I don't think he is the best chalk play, but certainly a good matchup. There's no denying that, and he's a good pitcher. So I get it with Peralta. There's just so many pitching options to choose from on this slate that he didn't quite make the cut for me, at least most likely. But again, I do think he is certainly, at the very least, a reasonable play. Lefty veteran Andrew Heaney will go for the Pirates. Been kind of a reverse splits guy over the last couple of years. A lot worse numbers for him against left-handed bats, which is interesting. You don't see that very often. So, yeah, not quite sure what to do with the Brewers. I kind of just not on them too much tonight, but it's just the nature of the slate where there's just so many spots to go. They didn't make the cut for me. So really mostly out on this game as a whole, but again, reasonable plays here for sure. Steve, what are you doing with Pirates and Brewers?
Yeah, I think Peralta ends up as the highest owned pitcher on the slate. You just get the 2,000 savings from Crochet. I think people are going to try to play Peralta, Nelson, Dodgers as if you're clicking in a lineup, I think people are going to try to make that work. I do think he's just always higher owned than I think he should be. If I'm always over on Bubic, I'm always under on Freddie Peralta. Every slate he comes in higher owned than I think than his talent is, just because he does have the strikeout upside. He is, I think, pretty surely not the level pitcher of the guys around him on this slate. Yeah. Has a higher walk rate, gives up more power, less consistent, but he does have the strikeout upside, and he is facing the Pirates here, bottom 3 offense in the sport against righties. Dead last in ISO, last 30 in the split. He's not a guy that I play often, but I think I've got to have some of him here. It's just clearly the best matchup on the board as far as avoiding damage. So I think he's a good play. I think he's a better play for like single entry stuff because I do like the guys around him. He has been pretty lucky this year, 2.76 ERA, but a 4.15 xFIP because he's got like a 230 batting average on balls in play. But I don't think that's going to, reverse itself tonight against the Pirates. So I like Peralta. Don't love him. And then I was high on the Brewers bats last night. They had a couple chances to break through. The Pirates used a ton of their bullpen last night. I think the Brewers are interesting here. They're kind of in that range. DC. We talked about how there's 10 teams on the slate with a team total between like 4.4 and 4.8. The Brewers are kind of in that group. So I think they're all right. If they get off to a good start against Haney, I could see it snowballing because they did use so many of their quote-unquote better relievers in a close game last night. So I like the Brewers, don't love them. I like Peralta, don't love them. It's kind of where I'm at with this game.
Do you care to guess what Sabre has O'Neill Cruz's ownership projected at on this slate?
1.7%.
0.16 is what they're so what is that? Two out of 1,000 lineups will have O'Neill Cruz.
Are you going to be one of those two?
Maybe one of my 5. We'll go 100x the field on O'Neill Cruz by playing 20% of them. You can run on Peralta too. He's got power. I mean, he's got to be a good play at that number.
Peralta gives up power too.
Yeah,
walks some power.
It's a fun play. So if I remember, I will get O'Neill Cruz in at least one of my.
You're hovering around that 6K range. You're not going to go to Teoscar Hernandez. You're going to go O'Neill Cruz.
You get the leverage too against the chalkiest pitcher of the slate. It's a good play.
No, I don't hate it at all.
In theory, it won't work, but I'll get my Sklansky bucks and try to go out to dinner with those tonight. Let's go to St. Louis. Another interesting game here. Going to be hot in St. Louis. Obviously, we saw those Cardinals lefties crush Ben Brown. Well, they hit 4 home runs. They all seem to come right in that 5th or 6th inning. Get Jameson Taillon here, he's been really good. I've played a ton of Taillon lately because he just keeps running into great matchups and pitching in good pitching conditions. It did fall apart for him in his last start against Milwaukee. Went negative 2.4 DraftKings points in that one, but in general has been good. I don't think this is a spot for Taillon. He's off the list for me, as is opposing starter Cardinals rookie Michael McGreevy, who I actually like quite a bit. I'm looking forward to using him in the right matchups, but this one is not the spot to use McGreevy. I do think he's a good pitcher, though, but can't get there today against this Cubs lineup. McGreevy, digging into him, he does seem to have some legitimately big traditional splits where he struggles against the lefties. So Happ, Tucker, Crow Armstrong, Michael Busch, all those guys I think are interesting against McGreevy in good hitting conditions here at Busch Stadium. And then I think you could mix in those Cardinals lefties against Taillon if you wanted to as well. But I do think there are better spots really for both these teams. So another game I won't have a ton of. I assume we'll get the Cubs pretty low owned tonight. If that's the case, I do think they're a good contrarian stack. Yeah, under 5% for all the Cubs is at least interesting. Steve, what are you doing with Cubs and Cardinals here?
Yeah, kind of a weird game. If the Dodgers weren't in Coors, I think you could make a better argument for paying up for these Cubs against an unproven pitcher. But I'm with you. I think he's going to be decent enough long-term that I don't really want to pay these prices for the Cubs there. I mean, they're all inflated because of all the games this weekend at Wrigley. And I was kind of thinking the same thing with Taillon. I feel like all the starts have been at home in 50-degree weather here at Wrigley. The first start that wasn't was obviously the one that went poorly last time. So I think he's pretty overpriced here. I do think the best plays in this game are these cheap Cardinals bats. I mean, the entire lineup is super cheap on a slate where, I personally want to get to Crochet. So I think you can play the top of this order at low ownership against a pitcher that is, a little bit above league average. I think playing the top 5 or so here is going to be the way that I do it. I'm not sure if I'm going to full stack them. I mean, even last night, they went off and they still weren't on the winner. The Cardinals are just so rarely the correct 5-man this season. Kind of hard for me to get to them on a 12-game slate as a full stack.
Yeah, I kind of got a feeling this game might have more runs than people are planning on, but I'm with you. It is hard, given all the other options, to get to St. Louis or Chicago, but for that reason, maybe you make the all contrarian lineup. Get O'Neill Cruz in there at 0.2%, get Kyle Tucker at 1%, and hope for some chaos on the slate as everybody.
Imagine if you play Nelson and the Dodgers pitcher and just play O'Neill Cruz and all the expensive Cubs instead of Coors.
Seems like something I would do and light my money on fire. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes with Cubs and Cardinals. Again, I do think we could see offense in that game.
Yeah.
Let's get to Houston next. Framber Valdez going for the Astros. Had been on an incredible run recently. Did come back to earth somewhat against the A's. Wasn't terrible, but 13 DraftKings points, just 3 strikeouts over 6 innings in that one. I'll give him a pass. Pitching in Sacramento, back home here.
He was nibbling.
Yeah. Facing a Phillies team that, you hear the Phillies name, and I think it kind of strikes fear into people. I get why they do have a lot of power, but they also play a lot of games, kind of obviously half their games in Philly, which is a great place to hit. Houston, not so much. Neutral / slightly pitcher-friendly park, and kind of think Framber gets back rolling here. I'm not really scared of this matchup. I like that he's at home. And I think I'll go a little bit under the radar at 9,500, but I think he's a great play. No way I can play fellow lefty Ranger Suarez at 9,700 against the all-righty Houston lineup, but these are 2 of the better ground ball pitchers in the league. So I'm off of bats here, I think, entirely. And Framber really the guy that I want from this game. Again, so many options on this slate that I don't know how much Framber I'm actually going to end up with, but I do expect him to pitch well, and I think he'll get you 20-plus fantasy points tonight most of the time. So I do think he is a good play. Steve, I know you're a big Framber fan. What are you doing with Astros and Phillies?
Yeah, he was on a huge roll and then was like 11K. It was 60% owned in Sacramento. I think that's the first time I haven't played him all season, and it actually worked out. He was not loving the heat. He was pitching around the zone. He walked 5 guys, but still, look, 13 ground balls, 3 fly balls. He's the exact same guy. Yeah. I have no issues with him having a bad outing in 90 degrees in Sacramento. I think he goes right back to dominating here. You mentioned the Philly lineup. Like, dude, after the top 2, this is a really bad lineup. I mean, Otto Kemp is hitting 6, Sosa 7, something named Buddy Kennedy's hitting 8. So if he can navigate Turner and Schwarber here, I think he has a huge outing.
Schwarber's not going to be able to hit Framber like that. Lefty, famous last words, but
yeah, Schwarber does have a ton of bombs against lefties this year. Yeah. So I will not say that because I will be playing Framber. But the reason that I'm not going to be like crazy overweight on Peralta is because I think there's 2 really good pivots right in that range in Framber and Bubic, who we talked about. So I'll be over on those 2 and probably under on Peralta, just trying to get some leverage there. I think the matchup is better than people think against this Bryce Harper-less Phillies team. And then, no Suarez for me against 9 righties from Houston.
I mean, give me Framber over Peralta straight up, and then you throw in the ownership discount. And I do think that's a really good pivot to make. One of the reasons
Framber's been absolutely nails at home this year too. He has like a 2 ERA on the season at home.
Yeah, I think he's a really, really strong play. Tournament play is Framber. Valdez, we're both off the bats here, it sounds like, for the most part. Brings us to Coors Field for Herman Marquez going for the Rockies. Actually used him in that I think the Miami start or the National start, one or the other. It was pretty good. He's actually pitched okay recently. If you look at the new game logs on DraftKings, Steve, I know you're a fan of those. Marquez has been pretty good. I would not expect him to be good in this start, of course, against the Dodgers, who are, credit to DraftKings, priced appropriately. 7,200. Ohtani is the highest I can remember any hitter being priced ever. I don't know if that's true, but certainly way up there, and rightfully so. Ohtani, obviously an amazing play. Worth it, I think, at 7,200 if you can fit him in your lineup. Not easy to do so. And then the Dodgers are going to open with Jack Dreyer, who will pitch, I think, in all likelihood, 1 or 2 innings, depending on how efficient he is in the first. And then we're pretty sure Mr. Justin Robleski, fellow lefty, will come in hopefully after Dreyer exits. There's no guarantee with these, right? We have seen situations in the past where someone's kind of listed as the long reliever, and for whatever reason it doesn't come to fruition. I would put it at, 90 to 95% probability that Robleski's in there in the by the third inning, but there is some risk that it won't be him. But that said, I know we both like this guy. He's looked pretty good in these last 3 outings, all 3 of them. He's operated, pretty close to kind of a starter's type workload, even if he hasn't come in the game right away. His stuff has graded out crazy good, digging in to him, where Stuff Plus gave his fastball in his last appearance a 131, which is like a better fastball than Crochet and Skubal have, which, again, I don't really think that's true for Robleski long term, but just to illustrate the point that he has legit good stuff, does Robleski. And, of course, he gets the pace-eating Rockies here, who just have enormous strikeout rates up and down the lineup. And we've seen plenty of bad pitchers, I think worse pitchers than Robleski, put up some big numbers against the Rockies. Obviously, Robleski, if he pitches well, really, really good chance at a win, because it won't go to Dreyer. It can't go to Dreyer. He won't go 5 innings, and he's starting the game. And after that, they got to give it to – it's basically it can be like official score discretion. And if Robleski pitches well, he should get the win here. 4 points at 5,500 goes a long way. So that's why I bring that up. I think he's got legit upside here, Steve. He threw 102 pitches 3 appearances ago. If he's rolling, if the Dodgers are rolling in this game, which we certainly expect their offense to go off, I wouldn't be shocked if they let him go 90 pitches and, save the bullpen a little bit for another day. So I'm in on Robleski here at 5,500. I almost feel like I got to be against this Rockies team. Nothing worse than the sweat of hoping your long reliever actually checks into the game. But beyond that, I think this is a pretty good spot for Mr. Robleski. So I'm in. Dodgers, I'll fit as many of these guys in as I can. I guess favorite plays on the Dodgers, for me, the top 2 are Ohtani and Muncy. I think are, in my eyes at least, pretty clearly the best 2. But, of course, the entire lineup is in play against Marquez and the Rockies bullpen. What are you doing with Coors Field tonight, Steve?
Yeah, I'll start with the pitcher. I had him in my pool before we had talked today, which makes me feel good that, we're both on this bulk innings guy on a 12-game slate. This could go way bad. But the talent's there. Like if you watch this guy pitch, he's throwing 99, 100 out of the pen. He's shown that he can go 4+ innings. I wouldn't expect 90 pitches, but like if he comes in the third, he gives you 4 innings, gets the win, he can get to 15 or so here. He's already done that 3 of the last 4 outings. So
I think he's capable of way more than 15. Capable.
But if he gives you 15, you would sign up for it right now.
Absolutely.
He's been unlucky this year. A strand rate under 60% and like a 20% home run per fly ball ratio, which will come down. His xFIP is tied with Carlos Rodon for third best on the slate. So that's ahead of guys like Strider, Suarez, Peralta. So this is an arm that I've kind of been hoping that they put in the rotation. I've been, kind of itching to use him, and now he faces the Rockies. It's cooler weather there. Yeah, this could go bad where they just have a bunch of guys go 1 inning and then he comes in like the 5th or something, and then we're just fucked here. But I'm definitely going to have some of him on a slate where the Dodgers have a 7.8 team total. And I kind of like the way it correlates too. Like you mentioned, I said something similar in the playbook where if the Dodgers are up 9-0 in the 6th inning, they're not going to be burning more arms. They're just going to let this guy run. So I kind of like the way that he correlates directly with the Dodgers stack. And he's so cheap that that's who you're playing if you use him anyway. So I'm obviously in on the Dodgers, and I'm in on him. They're so expensive. Actually, credit to DK for raising the prices here, or else these guys just would have been crazy. I think they come in lower owned for the full stack than they should, given the fact that there aren't really any other team totals above 5, and the only one is the Yankees, who I'm not entirely sold on. Like they're basically 2.5, 3 runs clear of most teams on this slate, and all of their bats outside of Ohtani and Muncy are projected under 20%. I think it's a spot to try to make work here on a slate where I don't have a ton of conviction outside of like the Braves. We'll talk about San Diego and San Francisco, who I think are interesting, but I think getting to the 5-man is super interesting because I think people are going to play Peralta, which is not going to allow them to 5-man this team.
I do think you'll see a lot of Nelson, Robleski, 5-man Dodgers stack. So
I don't think you're going to see much Robleski. I think it's going to be Peralta, Nelson, and then trying to figure out what works is kind of what I think is going to happen. But I don't know. I just have a hard time seeing other people besides us use a bulk guy on a 12-game slate.
Yeah, makes sense. So you will get that Dodgers 5-man a little bit lower owned, just because it has to be. Because if you're paying up for pitching, you really can't fit it in.
Yeah.
But just by math, the Dodgers will be probably lower owned than they should be. Any Rockies bats for you? I'm not playing the Pace Seeders tonight. What about you?
Not here, no. Maybe later in the series, but not against a guy that we think is pretty good and we're going to be using. So, I mean, I get it. They have a 4.5 team total, but so does 80% of the slate.
Yeah, if the Rockies do get there, I do think it's a pretty good chance it comes with power. So I don't think they're the craziest plays, guys like Goodman. But yeah, we can do better on this slate, I think. Boston and the Angels up next as we move westward. Garrett Crochet, we've talked about him in passing quite a bit. He is my SP1. It sounds like he is your SP1 as well. Been lights out all year, goes deep into games, one of the best strikeout arms in baseball, and gets this Angels team that, yes, has some power, but more importantly has a ton of strikeouts, a ton of swing and miss in the lineup. You never know. It's baseball. It's one game, but certainly on paper, Crochet, I think, should rack up the strikeouts here. I'd be pretty surprised if he doesn't get at least 6 or 7 strikeouts with double-digit upside. Certainly in play. He is expensive, $11K, and obviously if you're trying to fit Dodgers, he could be a tough fit there. But in a vacuum, at least, I do think Crochet is the best pitching play on the slate. On the other side, fellow lefty Tyler Anderson, I don't think is the best play on this slate. Won't be playing Anderson, even though looking at that Red Sox lineup, it is pretty rough, but I still can't do it with Anderson at 6,400. I don't think I'm playing the Red Sox bats here either, and definitely not playing the Angels. So mostly Crochet in this one for me. 8.5K prop. Yeah, pretty crazy. You don't see that number very often. Wouldn't be surprised to see him go over that total. Steve, what are you doing with Red Sox and Angels?
Yeah, I think Crochet is a priority on the slate. Like we said, with the 8.5K prop, this is why I'm not playing much Rodon or Strider. As I'm just, all my 10K plus, I'm just pushing to Crochet. I just want to be over the field on him. Best strikeout matchup for a lefty in baseball. The Angels are very right-handed heavy, and they do have power throughout the lineup. But man, yeah, highest strikeout rate in baseball in the split. Highest strikeout pitcher on the slate. We have cheap arms to pair him with. You can even double spend if you want. And then, yeah, Boston, I think the way they put this lineup out is interesting. So Anderson is extremely reverse split. Like he's much worse against lefties. So I'm going to be playing some minis with Boston, but not the pinch. Like, so when he comes out, guys like Ref Snyder is coming out of the game. Romy Gonzalez is coming out of the game. But I kind of want to leave the lefties in here, DC. Like Roman Anthony's up to the 2-hole.
He's the one I want the most, Roman Anthony.
Yeah. Duran's prices come down a bit. Mayer is cheap. They have a cheap third baseman in here. I think it's okay with Boston, but specifically avoiding the 2 pinch hit guys and playing these left-on-left bats. So I'll probably have some one-offs and secondary stacks of Boston here against Anderson, who finally, after what feels like 2.5 years, has had regression just hit him right in the face the last couple outings. Finally, for Tyler Anderson, gets his comeuppance. I'm going to play the Boston lefties here.
Yeah, seeing some love for Anderson in the chat. I don't think it's the craziest play, honestly, looking at some of those strikeout rates, but I'm not going to get there. I like both Nelson and Robleski better, so don't need Anderson myself. But, again, I think it's a reasonable play, mostly going to be on Crochet, and I agree with you. Roman Anthony, Duran, and Mayer, the 3 lefty versus Anderson, I think make the most sense for Boston if you do want to go in that direction. Let's get to the Nationals and the Padres. High-scoring game yesterday. I was kicking myself. Talked for people that watched the show yesterday. Talked a lot about Nationals lefties against Stephen Kolek, who has been crushed by left-handed hitters coming into that start, and they got to him. Abrams, Wood, both had huge games, and I think the Nationals put up double-digit runs in that one. They get Ryan Bergert here, who hasn't had very many big league innings and has actually pitched well against lefties via the numbers, but he's a 2-pitch guy, fastball, slider, and I wouldn't be shocked if the Nationals surprise some people again and put up some numbers. So it's hard to pay $5,300 for Abrams and $5,800 for James Wood, but these guys are studs, and I think in a good matchup, nobody will have them. I assume they'll be in the O'Neill Cruz range for ownership or close to it. And I kind of like that National stack if you're really trying to get contrarian. Trevor Williams will go for the Nationals, a guy you typically want to target with left-handed bats. Jackson Merrill, I think, makes the most sense. Gavin Sheets has some power. Not crazy about either of these offenses other than as a contrarian option. Certainly not playing either pitcher. Steve, what are you doing with Nationals and Padres?
I was just looking at the Padres projections on SaberSim. I don't think I've ever seen a hitter projected for 4.4 like Maldonado is today. That might be the lowest projection I've ever seen for a hitter. He deserves it. But, I think the Padres are interesting here. When I was writing the playbook earlier, and like we've talked about, haven't really loved a lot of full stacks throughout this slate. And then we end the slate with, 2 teams that are facing arguably the 2 worst pitchers on the slate in Williams and Cal Quantrill. So it's kind of a weird spot where like the 2 worst parks are facing the 2 worst pitchers. So I think the Padres are decent plays here. You get good price tags on guys like Jackson Merrill because of the injury. He's down to 4,400, Sheets 3,500, Cronenworth 3,200. I think the Padres are interesting here. Saber really likes them. So I might lean into that a bit on a slate where I don't have a ton of conviction in the mid-range as far as team totals. The Nats bullpen, of course, has been god-awful for the last month or so, has really contributed to their slide as the season has gone on. So, if they get to Williams early here, I don't like the park. I know Big T would yell at me for liking Padres, but, these West Coast games are also on the winner last night. So, not much to stand on there. So neither pitcher here. I'll be playing some Padres bats. I just like the price tags kind of throughout the order there for the Padres.
Big T's probably on the one bat that you're not on. Martin Maldonado, you're going to be in
the guy with the lowest hitter projection in the history of baseball DFS, 4.4.
Famous last words.
I actually lowered it to 4, just to 4 even, just to let everyone know.
Harsh, taking a half point away from Maldonado. He's not going to be pleased. Last game on the slate, we go to San Francisco. Obviously, a tough place to hit here, but we do have two. Verlander, maybe you can still call him mediocre. I can't go beyond that. For Verlander, coming off paternity leave, he's been bad this season. I think he just kind of is bad now in the twilight of his career. Gets the Marlins, though, so I do think he'll pitch okay, but I'm not playing Verlander at 7,500, and definitely not playing Cal Quantrill at 6K either. I'm not playing the Giants in this park. Sounds like you might have some interest in getting there against Quantrill, which I guess makes sense. They do have, with the addition of Devers, definitely some bats who can do some damage. They'll be low owned, but just not doing it myself. I'd rather go to the Nationals if I'm going contrarian. Steve, talk to us about Giants and Marlins here.
Yeah, I think the Giants' bats are the best plays in this game. They have come alive a bit since acquiring Devers, especially against right-handed pitching. No real shock there. Quantrill gets hit pretty hard by same-handed bats. So guys like Ramos, Adames, I think are interesting here. Just kind of an odd slate where you're not giving up that much with a team total by playing a team like the Giants or the Padres that you normally would, right? Like they basically have the same team total as teams like Arizona and Atlanta. So despite the worst park, you're facing much worse pitcher and really bad bullpens in these last two games with the Nats and the Marlins. So while it's not something that I do often, I think on this specific slate, it does make some sense to go to these later games. I do wish that the Giants were a bit cheaper, though, throughout. Devers is up over 5K. But, you're just attacking arguably the two worst pitchers on the slate. I just don't love the park overall. And then Verlander, I don't know. He'll probably end up being cut. I'll probably end up just playing more Burns and not the double condom Justin Verlander price.
Very, very different plays, Justin Verlander and Chase Burns, that's for sure. But we'll raw dog it with Mr. Burns, or at least I will. Steve, let's find out your favorite pitchers on the slate, your favorite pitching combination on DraftKings. We'll skip the dong draft today. We're running a little bit over time, and I know we both got a lot of work to do over the next hour to get our lineups finalized for the slate. But your favorite pitching combination on the slate, Steve?
Yeah, so I think the most popular one will be the Peralta-Ryan Nelson one. My favorite is getting up to Crochet from Peralta, sacrificing a bat there. I think Crochet's got 30-plus in him tonight. And then the other thing I'll be doing, I mentioned earlier, is the pivots around Peralta, going to Framber, going to Chris Bubik there.
Yeah, I think we're pretty similar on pitching. Updating the ownerships here. Sabres not budging on Chase Burns. They still got him at 1.3% owned. I'm too much of a donkey to pass that up for the top pitching prospect in baseball, even in Great American Ballpark, even against the Yankees. So give me some Chase Burns and Robleski. Should be a fun night of pitching. I will have plenty of Crochet, Nelson, Valdez. Really, those five is kind of what I'm looking at tonight. So, yeah, should be interesting. Hopefully, those guys can come through. Steve, give us your top two stacks. I'll give mine, and we'll get on out of here.
Yeah, outside of the Dodgers, I really like Arizona here, despite the watered-down lineup. Talked about how the White Sox could just punt this game if it goes bad early and just let one of those long relievers eat a bunch of innings. I think the same thing for the Braves against the Mets. Mets, we talked about at the top of the show, used all four of their good bullpen arms for 18-plus pitches yesterday, trying to come back and win that game. If it goes south for Montas early, I could see it getting ugly for the Mets and having them avoid using the top end of the bullpen, which you always want to avoid when you stack up against the Mets.
Yeah, certainly agree with all those. I'll throw in actually same game. I don't love the game stacks in baseball because you actually kind of want a lopsided game, but I really like both the Mariners and the Twins in Target Field tonight. Again, I'll probably separate them for the most part, but I do think both stacks have a lot of upside, looking at specifically the lefty bats on both sides, especially the Twins side of it. All right, Steve, that'll do it for the show. Thanks everybody for watching it. We do appreciate the support. The show will be back same time, same place tomorrow. It'll be me and Stats breaking it down for you guys then. Good luck to everybody in their contests and their lineups tonight. We'll be in the Discord answering questions, finalizing lineups over at Run Pure Sports. And until tomorrow, he's Steve Boyd and I'm Draft Cheat. We're out of here.